This tribe in Africa believes that the stars are their ancestors, who came down from the sky to live among them. These people have never seen an airplane or a telescope, yet they know the names of all the constellations and can predict eclipses. And their myths actually describe what scientists now believe happened during the formation of our solar system. Welcome back, everyone. Here today we were going to learn about the Dogon people who live in the Sahara Desert in Mali and some of their beliefs. Let me set the stage for you. You've probably heard of the Sahara Desert, this huge area of North Africa. But did you know that until about 8,000 years ago, this area was actually green and full of life? Now it is covered in sand dunes and hot springs. But during prehistoric times, it was covered in vegetation and had rivers, lakes, and pools of water. This made it more like the tropical savannas found further to the south. The Dogon people refer to this time period as the land of the ancestors. They tell stories of how the earth was once full of these magical beings that were wise and good. But unfortunately, something happened and the world changed. The earth became cracked and dry, and all of these beings had to flee into the sky. These beings then turned into stars so that they could continue to watch over their people. Now let's fast forward a bit to today. We meet the Dogon. They are a small ethnic group living in the Sahara Desert in Mali. They number around 500,000 with about 70 different clans spread out across the region. They mainly live in small villages and have always been farmers. Even today, they don't use any modern farming equipment like tractors. They just stick to traditional methods and tools. Also, the Dogon people are known as one of the best storytellers in all of Africa. Every evening, after the workday is finished, the Dogon men get together and share stories with each other about their history and myths. It's also common for them to gather around a fire and tell stories to their children. So you might think that this would be a pretty easy job, because most of these stories have been told many times before. But for the Dogon, every story is unique. In fact, if you listen to two separate Dogon storytellers, you will hear the same story differently, because each storyteller adds his own personal flair and wisdom to the tale. For example, the main character might act a little bit differently, or there might be a change of pace, or the lesson at the end may be interpreted differently. Now, when anthropologists studied the Dogon people, they noticed that many of their myths and stories seemed to align with scientific theories. Of course, the Dogon had no idea that these stories matched up with science, because they came up with these tales long before science was around. In fact, when anthropologists first asked the Dogon about their myths, they didn't even realize that they were talking about scientific things like constellations and solar systems. The Dogon people refer to these stories as Namo, and they contain a lot of information about astronomy, cosmology, creation, and history. Some of the most well-known Dogon myths explain the creation of the world, the order of the universe, and the flood myth. But in this video, we're mostly going to focus on their beliefs about the stars and how they came to be. The Dogon people are one of the only tribes in the world that refer to the Pleiades star cluster as the Seven Sisters. All of the other African tribes call these stars the Seven Brothers. According to the Dogon, the Seven Sisters are seven beautiful girls who were being pursued by a monster called Namo. The monster was half human and half fish, and he lived in the lower world. One day, the sisters saw a shooting star and were fascinated by it. They decided to follow it to see where it landed. But when they arrived, they realized that it was just a small rock. The sisters started to feel very embarrassed, thinking that they had been tricked. But suddenly the rock started to shake, and a giant man came out of it. He introduced himself as Urlungur, the son of the owner of the lower world. He told the sisters that he had been sent to marry one of them. Now, normally, this would have been an honor for the sisters, but they knew that the man was a trickster, and he had lied to them about the shooting star. So they refused to marry him. Enraged, the monster dove into the nearby water and emerged with a large net. He threw the net over the sisters and captured them. Luckily, one of the sisters had a magic knife which she used to cut a hole in the net. Then the six sisters jumped through the hole and escaped to the sky. The monster was able to catch one of them, though, and dragged her to the ground. She begged her sisters to keep moving, but they stopped to help her. The sisters pulled her up with their combined strength, and all seven escaped to the sky. Once again, the monster dove into the water, but this time he couldn't catch any of them. Exhausted and defeated, the monster climbed onto a nearby rock and transformed into a crocodile. As a last-ditch effort, he spat water into the sky and created a giant flood. But the seven sisters, along with all of the humans on Earth, were saved by a hero named Amma. Amma dived into the water and pushed a giant boulder to the bottom of the ocean. This stopped the flow of the water and saved the people. After the flood, the sisters stayed in the sky as the Pleiades and continued to watch over the humans. To the Dogon, these stars are not just random points of light. They are the actual ancestors of the Dogon people. Now here's where things get really interesting. Scientists have discovered that around 4,600 years ago, there was a giant cloud of gas and dust between Earth and Mars. It's likely that this dust contained organic molecules, which later formed amino acids, the building blocks of life. This makes our solar system what we call a hotbed of activity with lots going on at the time. Could it be that the Dogon people witnessed the formation of our solar system all those years ago? Well, some astronomers think so. Take a look at this picture of the Pleiades star cluster. Do you see the two stars on the far left? If you were to draw a straight line between these two stars and extend it outwards, you would pass right through the Orion Nebula. There is strong evidence that this is exactly what the Dogon people saw when they looked up in the sky. And it just so happens that the Orion Nebula is a stellar nursery where new stars are born. When the Dogon were looking at the nebula over 4,000 years ago, it likely appeared much brighter than it does today. Astronomers believe that their myths describe what they actually saw. When the Dogon describe the seven sisters fleeing from the monster Namo, they are describing the Hyades and Pleiades star clusters moving through the Orion Nebula. The monster Namo represents the Great Rift, a large dark nebula that sits in the middle of the Milky Way galaxy. Finally, the Dogon refer to Sirius as the fallen star, and this could be because it is actually a binary star system, and the smaller companion star is very faint. It's important to note that the Dogon people have never seen a telescope, yet they still have a good understanding of the night sky. They have memorized the positions of thousands of stars and know when eclipses will occur. They are even able to predict meteor showers. In fact, the Dogon are so talented at reading the stars that French colonial officials used to consult with them in order to figure out the best time to plant crops. It's believed that the Dogon have been observing the sky for hundreds of generations and have passed down their knowledge through storytelling. Some people have criticized the Dogon, saying that they misunderstood what they saw in the sky. They claim that the Dogon simply took real astronomical events and added their own myths to them. But others argue that this is just a way for humans to try and understand what is happening in the universe. And who are we to say that the Dogon are wrong? Just because we haven't personally witnessed the creation of the solar system doesn't mean that they aren't telling the truth. After all, we're all just trying to make sense of the world around us. And the Dogon's myths and stories are a beautiful example of this. Whether or not we believe in their specific tales, we can still appreciate the creativity and imagination of these ancient people. They remind us that there are so many things that we don't know about the universe, and that there is still so much to explore and discover. So the next time you look up at the night sky, remember the Dogon people and their amazing myths and stories. Maybe they're onto something. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to check out my video about the Himba people who can predict earthquakes. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.